You know, grief is something pretty much every single one of us will experience. It's universal, but at the same time, it has to be one of the most isolating feelings in the world. When you lose someone you love, it's like the volume on everything just gets turned down. The world feels empty, confusing, quiet, and you're just left there trying to figure out this new reality, feeling completely on your own. This right here, this is from someone who went through the sudden, tragic loss of a friend. And I think a lot of us can relate to that feeling. You're just adrift. You can't get your feet back on the ground. And you start questioning everything, even the very meaning of life itself. It's like the whole foundation you stood on just crumbled away. So where do you go from there? How do people actually start to pick up the pieces? Well, for some, the answer isn't found in being quiet. It's found in making a sound. It's an ancient vocal practice, one that's designed to connect them to something much bigger than their own pain. So let's dive into what that really means. Okay, so at the very heart of this practice is one single really powerful phrase, Namu-myoho-renge-kyo. Now, I know it might sound a little complex when you first hear it, but its purpose is actually incredibly straightforward. People see it as a tool, a way to connect with the deepest truths of life, especially in those moments when life feels its most fragile. If we look at the translation, you start to see just how deep it goes. It's not just a random collection of words, it's a real statement of purpose. Devotion to the mystic law of the Lotus Sutra. And this mystic law they're talking about, that's the ultimate reality of life, of the whole universe. The core idea is that when you chant this phrase, you're not just speaking, you're actively trying to sync up with the fundamental rhythm of existence itself. Let's break it down even more. Namu, that comes from Sanskrit, and it basically means devotion or dedication. Myo means the mystic law we just talked about. Renge means lotus flower, which is a really powerful symbol. You see, a lotus grows in muddy water, but blooms into this beautiful, clean flower. It's this idea that enlightenment and strength can emerge even from our toughest struggles. And finally, Kyo means teaching. So when you string it all together, the whole thing becomes this devotion to a profound teaching that, just like that lotus, we can find beauty and strength right in the middle of our own muddy water, our own suffering. So how does all of this philosophy actually become a practical tool when you're grieving? I mean, this isn't just some abstract idea. For a lot of people, this is a very real, very active practice they use to navigate the incredible pain of loss. In some traditions, the chant is thought to do two things at once when someone is mourning. First, it's an offering for the person who has passed away. The sound is believed to help guide their spirit, offering prayers for peace on their journey. But, and this is just as important, it's for the people left behind. It becomes a way to actively work through sorrow, to transform that heavy, dense energy of grief into a source of inner strength and resilience. This personal story really captures that idea of transformation perfectly. The person was talking about a recent loss in their family, and they explained that the pain doesn't just vanish, of course not. But what the practice does is help them feel differently about it. It reframes the whole experience, allowing them to come to terms with what happened without being completely crushed by the suffering it caused. So what does that transformation actually feel like on the inside? Well, people who practice it often describe a clear series of changes. It starts with this profound sense of calm, even in the middle of all the chaos. And from that calm, they say, comes wisdom, the clarity to make good decisions. Then, a renewed compassion for other people. And finally, the courage to actually take the steps you need to take to move forward. It's like a chain reaction that all kicks off with sound. You know, all of this leads to a really fascinating question. We've heard the personal stories and we've talked about the spiritual ideas behind it, but is this all just a matter of faith, or is there something real, something we can actually measure that's happening in our brains and our bodies when we do something like group chanting? Well, it turns out science is starting to look into that very question. A 2023 study published by the National Institutes of Health decided to investigate the physiological and psychological effects of group chanting. Now, it's worth noting this specific study used the sound Om, but its findings on what happens when people make sounds together in sync give us some incredible clues about what might be going on here. The experiment itself was pretty simple, but really effective. The researchers got a group of 34 people together and had them do a 12-minute chanting session. And they took measurements of key stress indicators, both what people reported feeling and actual physical signs, right before and right after, to see if anything changed. And the results? They were pretty striking. First, let's talk about how people felt. Using a standard psychological survey for anxiety, they found that before chanting, the average score was about 35. After just 12 minutes, that number dropped to under 28. That's a really significant drop. It's a clear sign that people subjectively felt a lot less anxious. But it wasn't just a feeling. The physical proof was maybe even more powerful. They took saliva samples and measured cortisol. That's the body's main stress hormone. And get this, they found an average decrease of over 15%. Their actual body chemistry was changing, shifting away from a state of stress in just 12 minutes. The study also found something really interesting when they compared chanting out loud to chanting silently. Now, both methods lowered that stress hormone, cortisol, but the group that chanted vocally reported an even bigger drop in their anxiety. They also used words like focus to describe how they felt. The silent group, on the other hand, while they also felt less stressed, were more likely to report feeling tired or drowsy. It really suggests that the physical act of making the sound plays a huge part in the mental benefits. And all of this brings us to what might be the most powerful piece of the puzzle, especially when we're talking about grief. It's this idea of moving from the deep isolation of your own personal pain into the supportive space of a collective harmony. The NIH study calls what's happening a synchronous musical activity. That's the scientific way of saying something we all kind of know intuitively, right? When people do something rhythmic together, singing, dancing, or chanting, something powerful happens between them. It syncs up more than just their voices. It syncs them up as people. And the effects of this group synchrony are well documented and pretty profound. It's known to make people more cooperative. It boosts feelings of connection with each other. It can even encourage altruism, wanting to help others. At its core, it creates this powerful sense of unity and belonging. Now just imagine what that could mean for someone who feels totally isolated by their grief. This quote from one of the study participants just says it all. "I felt a vibration spread through the whole room as we chanted together." It's not just some abstract concept, you can literally feel it. It's a physical experience of shared energy. The sound itself fills the space between people and builds a bridge. So when you put it all together, what you have is a practice that weaves together the spiritual, the psychological, and the physiological. It creates this shared experience that works on all these different levels at once. And it directly fights back against the isolation that makes grief so hard. It takes this lonely personal event and transforms it into a moment of deep human connection. Which leaves us with one last big question to think about. Everything we've looked at today, from those raw personal stories of loss to the hard scientific data, it all seems to be pointing in the same direction. It suggests that the simple, resonant act of making sound together might be one of our most ancient and most effective tools for healing. A bridge built of pure vibration that can lead us out of our own private sorrow and back to the shared human experience. Can a simple sound really be that powerful? The evidence we've seen today suggests it's a question very much worth asking. Watch the video on the left and learn what scientific evidence is proving how the practice physically alters the brain to reduce stress and anxiety.